has been a very long journey and a lot of trials and tribulations, things that didn't work, lots of different facilities, lots of head of neuro, head of the, I mean, you see all the practitioners and then you're like, yay, they're going to fix me. And then you go and you're like, oh, I didn't get fixed, so it can be, you can really kind of get some heartache for that process. So I think that when you start to realize, like, you know what, I can find my answers, I can figure out health and help and all of that, that you have really, just a different experience through the process than when you kind of give someone else your power and you're just like, fix me, make me better. And then when they don't, you're like, oh, I guess I just can't get better. And it's like, no, maybe we just need to go about it from a different angle. And so,
Yeah, I love that so much. And one of the things that you're saying is uh, empower yourself with knowledge. So even if
absolutely.
something they did, they tried, or kind of guided you in,
Hmm.
they have all this data and you
Hmm.
wanted to learn, how do I interpret the data and also figure
Absolutely.
out different ways of healing? Because
Yes.
the medical community, they do have great advice, they have research, but they may not look at the whole person holistically,
Hmm.
as if
Right.
maybe that's not the only answer. Maybe there are other ways to start feeling better. And I think that's what's really unique about you, is that we really want to go after root causes
Yes.
instead of masking symptoms. And so
Yes.
that's why today I thought you were the perfect person to go over what elimination diet is all about,
Yeah.
and how that is really the basis for, if somebody really wants to get to the root of their symptoms and their
Hmm.
issues, this really has to be kind of step one. Do you agree?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it's process that I've had to walk myself through on so many occasions. I mean, depending on people's condition or the reasons in which they've started this journey, it can really look different. It can be a different process every single time you walk through it. And so it's helpful and constructive when you have somebody to walk that journey with, because it can be a bit overwhelming. It is not easy to let go of things that we like or we want, or change is not easy. So it's definitely a process.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why, it's a good idea to have an advocate, a support
Mhm.
person that can help you walk you through this process. So, we're going
Absolutely.
to kind of go over like the most major things, the big rocks that people should look for when they
Mhm.
do an elimination diet. But also at the end, if this is something that you want extra guidance for, and you're saying, like, I know this is a rewarding but also challenging
Mhm.
process, and I would
Mhm.
love to have support and somebody walk me through this, they can reach out to you, correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love that. That would
And this
be
is
great.
something that you could help others with as well.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I wanted to kind of put this in the beginning because I know this might go long. But Liza, for anyone who, like, you have questions about your own health, or you're wondering if she could help you, or possibly something is ringing for you while you're listening and you're like, you know what, this is could be the path I need to start with, and possibly working with you, let us know, like, what's your email, how can they get in touch with you? If I believe you said that you're offering a 20-minute
Yeah.
complimentary consultation.
Yeah, so I do offer a free 20-minute strategy session that kind of just gets you to see where I come from and I'm seeing where you come from. We can see if we vibe, if we can work together. Also, too, resources, like what kind of resources can I provide for you? Anybody that wants to get a hold of me is welcome to email me. So it's Liza, Liza, at banduriholistics.com. So, and I'll get back to you.
Yes, and at the end of this, we'll drop it in the comments, but it's also
Yeah.
in the description of this live. You'll see up above, Liza has her contact information, as well as some other freebies that you might be interested in downloading for free. Okay, so my first question to you is, what would you say to everyday normal people, why including the elimination diet is important when it comes to starting the process of healing your gut?
That's a great question. So, 70% of all Americans will suffer from digestive disease or dysfunction in their lifetime. And it's sad to say, but that number is very possibly increasing as the years go on. So, when we think of the importance of gut health, we need to realize that it's an upstream factor in like numerous downstream health issues. So, we've all heard the statement, we are what we eat. That statement can't be any truer. What we eat feeds our cells and gives our body the ability to function. And so practitioners use elimination diets to find the root and the trigger to disease and system dysfunction, to understand our body's communication with us, and to hopefully dismantle patterns that are causing chronic inflammation that can lead to disease. So, one thing I do know is that our body is extremely sensitive to positive change. Our gut lining repairs and replaces itself every 3 to 5 business days, only on the business days, every three to
Exactly.
five days.
You don't know what you're doing on the
Right,
weekend.
right. I know. Yeah, they got to people on the weekend. But so it's very responsive to change, and when we support our body in the way that it needs, we definitely feel a difference. And I think that that was when I really got into understanding how to work with my body. I realized that a lot of the approaches that were taken before by different practitioners came from a line of suppression, especially in autoimmune conditions. They want to suppress the antibody activity. They want to kind of force the body to work the way they want it to. The only problem with that is there's not any support in that statement. We're not supporting the body to work in the way that it's literally designed to work. And so when we're doing an elimination diet, we're in essence kind of reconnecting the communication with our body that's been lost.
I love that. And I love that you're saying that it reestablishes that communication, because
Mhm.
when we don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
how do we know how to communicate and listen to our body and listen to where the root cause is? So, we're going to jump in. So, talk us through how someone can, or actually, let me back up just a little bit. What would you say to someone before they begin this process? So they decided, you know what? I need to do this. I need to set aside time in my schedule. I'm so sick and tired of living with these symptoms. I'm tired of wondering if something's wrong with me. Doctors can't figure me out. I'm tired. Like, lots of things could be happening for someone. And I talked in part one, different symptoms people might be experiencing. So if they decide, I'm going to do this, what should they do before they begin?
Okay, well, what we do before we begin is, I mean, there's a lot of literature out there that you can read on this process. The one thing is that it needs to be a customed journey. That I mean, the elimination diet looks different for everyone, and it should, because not every person is exactly the same. We have bio individuality. So, why you would want to do the elimination diet and why I want to do the elimination diet, two totally different issues, then you really need to kind of tailor it to those needs. I think understanding your whys. Why do you want to walk through this process? What are you hoping to accomplish? Really needs to kind of be solid, because it is a journey and it is a process and it is change. So if you are trying to do it for A, B, and C, well, then there's different things that we would remove for A, B, and C. And kind of realizing we're going to implement this one thing at a time. We're going to take it low and slow, because anytime we just try to be like, you know what, I'm going to eliminate 17 things from my diet and this is going to be great, I'm going to feel
Yeah.
awesome. I can tell you your sustainability in that is going to be a little difficult, because you hit yourself so hard, so quick, so fast. You didn't give yourself grace through the process, you know? So I think really understanding why you're doing it, and putting together a game plan of, I'm starting here, I need to finish here. What are my steps in the the beginning to the end, and knowing I'm taking baby steps to get to that end, is really important.
I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head that there needs to be a roadmap. There needs to be, like,
Absolutely.
you see where the finish line is.
Mhm.
and you understand that there are steps, because if you just try to jump from start to finish, it
Yes.
could be a very miserable process. And
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
so I totally agree with you on that. But there's something you touched on a little bit that I would love for you to explain a little bit more, and that is your why. We talked
Yeah.
about this before the camera started about your why power and tapping
Mm.
into your why power. Um, Share with me why you feel that people should understand their why before they begin.
Okay. So anytime we walk through any path of change, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. This has to be a process that you realize is not always convenient. You need a support system to really kind of help you sustain this type of change and realizing that it is truly a lifestyle change. So when you're realizing like, why am I doing this? I mean, some people can be like, I want to be a better person for my children. I want to have more energy. I want to be, have the ability to function better so I can do better with work. Or, I mean, it really taps into their life. How are these issues and these symptoms or the things that you're struggling with, how are they affecting your life? And hold on to that, because that's truly what's going to be your motivation on those challenging days where you're like, I don't want to prep my snack. I
Yes.
don't want to do I just want to have that thing that I'm craving. I want to have, when you feel yourself backsliding and falling into old patterns and behavior, you need to be able to look back and remember, like, why am I doing this? What is the purpose for me to be in this moment, so that it holds you strong through those challenging days.
Yeah, and I love that, and this is something that I work with my clients all the
Yeah.
time, and
Mhm.
we have a comment, "I love the power of why. It changes
Mhm.
for me too with
Yes.
whatever my goals are."
Yes.
So true, because, even though you may want to say that I'm doing this to feel better, um,
Right.
Liza touched on it like, you know what? If I keep going deeper with this, I'm doing this to feel better. I'm doing this so I can show up for work. I'm doing
Mhm.
this so that I'm the best person I could be to grow my business. I'm doing this so I'm an example for my children. So there's
Yes.
a lot of deeper whys, and it's
Mhm.
super important, like Liza said, when things are going gets tough and you
Yep.
feel frustrated, that you take a moment, step back, and answer yourself like, why? What is my deep why? So
Yeah.
thank you to, I think that might be Sherry.
Hi,
It
Carrie.
just says Facebook user, but
Right.
all right. So we talked about what should we do before we begin, which was
Yeah.
discovering your why power, then creating a roadmap. So
Yes.
let's talk about the steps. What are
Yeah.
the steps to the elimination diet?
Well, so it's like I said, it's going to look different for everybody involved. Every individual is going to have their own roadmap, their own steps. And two, do you have a supportive environment? That is going to be so crucial for you to walk through that process. Are your friends and family on board to support you through this journey? We need a community. We cannot do this by ourselves. There are days, like I said, I mean, we have to honor the fact that this is not an easy process and that we are changing our lifestyle. So, are the people around us also in support of that? I mean, when they're making dinner and you can't have the things that they're eating, that can be very difficult. You being around things that you're trying to avoid or eliminate, especially in the beginning when we're developing kind of our self discipline and our willpower to remove these things, it can be challenging. And so I think that when you get to a place, you've established your roadmap, you know what you're trying to avoid, you have kind of your timeline figured out, then giving yourself tools to help you walk through that process, because we all need tools, right? We can't do it by ourselves. So having a community behind you, people that are helping walk that process with you, realizing that it's going to take some preparation. We need to like prep some snacks, some meal plans, get together, like, just so we're not reaching to the foods that we're trying to avoid out of convenience or just, I'm hungry, I need to eat. We need to have snacks kind of around and available available to be like, okay, I have what I need. I'm good. I know that sometimes I hear from a lot of patients of mine that they go grocery shopping and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't avoid this aisle. It's so hard for me. How do I grocery shop? Online grocery shopping. I mean, the pandemic helped us with this.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
we
Oh
can
yeah.
just do pickup. You go through, you go online, you pick your list, your items you need, you go pick them up, boom, it's done. You don't even have to go through the aisle. You don't have to put yourself, remove the temptations that you know you're going to struggle with. Don't even put yourself in that position. I think that the out of sight rule can be really helpful here. If it is in your line of sight, you're going to think about it, you're going to crave it, you're going to want it. So kind of removing things from your line of sight so that it's not a temptation for you. You don't have to struggle with it, at least in the beginning. As you get further along in the process, it gets a lot easier to get, you just get a little more practice with it. Things don't affect you as much. Also, understanding your relationship with food. Why do we want to eat the things that we're eating? Can we put other things in place of that to help us deal with whatever we're using the food for? Also can be really helpful. So, and again, remembering your why on the day when you really want that cheeseburger, but you know you're not supposed to, like reinforcing that. So,
Yeah, and you touched on super like that was one of my questions is your tips,
yeah,
and so helpful that planning and preparation again,
yes,
and then also your environment.
yes,
Set yourself up for success by having the things that you need, and also don't have things around that you know are trigger foods for you or you know that are
absolutely.
temptations. So I love that. I'm gonna go look at my question list to make sure that I touched on everything. And you talked about having a supportive environment, getting your
Yep,
family and friends on board.
that's
Love your tip
crucial.
of online groceries. I do that all the time. I used to have an issue and I used to be like, oh, but other people touching my groceries. But I had to get over that like real
Right.
quick because I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
but somebody could have touched that like 10 seconds ago, like,
Yeah.
and you would have never known. So, raise your hand in the comments if you felt the same. Like, but I'm telling you right now, it's almost better because the store doesn't want you to return the items. So they're going to try
Right.
to pick the best things. Trust me on that one. Okay. So my next question is food reintroduction. What
Right.
does that look like? Like, how do you do that?
So, what we have to understand is that when we're taking something out of our diet, number one, we need to give it enough time to actually allow our body to respond to that change. So if we're only waiting like a week or 2 weeks and we're like, oh, I don't see a difference, and it's like, well, you probably should have waited a little longer. Like, this is not a couple of weeks process. When I'm looking at an elimination diet process, I mean, you really want to give it its time. So we're talking around like 6 months. 6 months, we're going to take the time, we're going to remove things, we're going to allow our body the time to adjust and correct. Because really, in essence, when we're eating things that our body doesn't agree with, we're creating inflammation. We're starting like these little fires all over our body, and the body's been so used to having those fires that you can't really recognize where the fire is even coming from, really. And so when you start to put those fires out, you can address the damage that they've been doing, number one, because when you do the elimination diet, you also need to be supporting the system to heal what the foods have been causing. There's damage involved. So we need to heal that damage. And just removing the food isn't always enough. So that's why the process really does look different for everybody, because we don't know what the situation was that caused the problems that it did. And so, really taking the time, letting the body calm down, come into a state of balance. And then, once you start to slowly introduce food, we're doing it one thing at a time. We're going to see when I ate this, some things are going to tell you right away. You're going to end up with some symptoms right away. Your body's like, don't ever give that to me. I'm good.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be things where you're like, I think I'm okay. I don't think it was a problem. But then a week later, you're really starting to feel the bloating. You're really starting to feel the abdominal discomfort. Or two, I mean, it can manifest in a bunch of different ways. So we're keeping a journal. We're understanding and really trying to tap into that communication that our body desperately needs from us. How often do we eat something and we don't feel the greatest afterwards, but it wasn't enough to avoid it. So you're just like, yeah, it was worth it. It tastes amazing. Like I
Yeah.
had that. I don't feel the greatest, but it was worth it. And then at the end of the day, you realize it might have not been worth it. That it can cause issues down the road. Um, so I think that people need to be patient with the reintroduction of food. And you really want to take a slow method to it so that you give your body the opportunity to communicate with you and that you're paying attention to that communication. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I removed gluten, but they weren't fully committed and on board with removing gluten. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I only had a little bit. Just a little bit. I just did a little bit. And the thing you have to understand about elimination diet is you're eliminating. We have to remove it completely. So when we are still doing little bits here and there, that's like saying, I only swallowed a little bit of poison, just a little bit. It wasn't a lot. I think I'm good. But there was still an effect done to the body. So we're not getting a true read. We're not really understanding like the true communication. And so our results aren't going to be 100%. We're not going to get the information that we're looking for. So you got to be honest with yourself, and really, really eliminate, and then
Yeah.
introduce back slowly.
What's cool though that is available to many people is that even if you are eliminating the high common trigger foods,
Right.
there's still a lot of recipes and a lot of foods you are
Oh,
allowed to
so
have.
many. So
So,
many.
yeah.
Yeah, I've had clients tell me, I feel like I am never gonna be able to eat anything I love ever again. I feel like I'm so confined to these regulations or these rules and I know that in the beginning it can be hard to switch the narrative and realize everything that we've been doing might need to change. But how exciting that we get to open ourselves up to new recipes, new ideas, I mean, Pinterest is amazing. There's so
Oh,
many,
yeah.
right? And I
Mhm.
actually have a Pinterest board that if people wanted to, they can sign on to. I have a bunch of recipes and there's so many different ways to modify them nowadays that even if there's 3 or 4 things in that recipe that you can't have, let's modify it. Let's change it. Let's make it yours to where you can still try something new. You can still do something new, but it can fall in line with where you're trying to be at.
Yes, I love that so much. I just wanted to throw that out there for people to feel encouraged that you're
Yeah,
not like resigned to like this terrible boring diet. There's actually
absolutely.
ways to still eat an enjoyable
Yep.
diet
Mhm.
and enjoy the process, whether that's through new recipes or experimenting with your current favorites and swapping some things out. And
Yep.
that's what's really cool about working with someone like Liza is because we may feel stuck, but
Yep.
having that support system to be like, hey, here's a menu of ideas, which one of these feels good to you.
Yeah.
That's what's really awesome about having a support person, because there is a reason you're doing this, and if we
Yes.
want to ensure great outcomes, then it's better to not cheat ourselves in the process and have to feel like we're starting all over again. So
Right.
you mentioned introduce things one at a time, slowly
Yes.
give your body time to respond and communicate with you. What does that communication look for? What is some symptoms that somebody might be experiencing that they know, like, this is probably not good for me?
Yeah, so our body has lots of different ways to communicate with us. And so when we're thinking about symptoms that we should look for, abdominal discomfort is definitely one of them. If you're feeling pain in your stomach, that's a problem.
Yes.
And then you have, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, headaches. If you're fatigued after you eat, when we eat, it should give us energy. It should make us feel good. You should feel a difference when you're eating the things that your body wants. If you're feeling afterwards that you're sluggish, you need to lay down, you're very fatigued, That's probably a sign your body's struggling to process it. And then two, skin reactions. I mean, skin is one of our biggest detox organs. What a lot of people don't realize is when you have a rash, you have eczema, you have hives, this is the body's ability to try to push out toxins, to push out things that it's not happy with, it doesn't want. And so even if people are suffering with acne or they're just any type of skin condition, it's really an underlining issue that there's something going on inside. So we definitely want to pay attention to those. And then we don't realize the connection that our gut and our brain share. We have like a gut brain axis, so we're very connected. And so, like 90% of your serotonin is created in the gut. So, when you're thinking about gut imbalance, it can be a mental problem as well. So we're anxiety, depression, if you're feeling a mood shift after you eat something, it could be very much not agreeing with you. So those are definitely things you want to pay attention for.
And this is so important, right? Because
Absolutely.
we want to live our best lives. We don't
Yes.
want to be suffering. And even though this is a process, it can seem overwhelming. But if you
Yeah.
have a plan in place and
Mhm.
you give yourself steps to do this,
Right.
um, and uh, prepping and planning is so important. And
Yes.
somebody put on their tools, prep meals ahead, plan ahead, remove temptation. That's
Yeah.
Sherry.
Hi, Sherry.
Yes. I mean, we need to have that in the comments. We need to have it
Yeah.
written. So if somebody said, you know what, this is me. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to suffer anymore. I need help
Mhm.
with this. Um, I know we talked about this in the beginning, but for people who are just jumping on and catching us now, uh, can they reach out to you? Is this something that you help people with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like we said, this is a process and it can be very large. And what I found is that breaking it down into digestible pieces and that journey has to be customized for the individual. You need to meet someone where they're at right now and then help to guide them through that process. The level of success at that moment when you have somebody to walk hand in hand with it, it's not too big when you have a community and you have support. It makes it so much easier to walk through this type of process. And so I love being able to be supportive to people and help them I mean, I've been there myself, I've walked it. It's not like I've read a book and I'm just like, here, these are all the tips. No, I've had to do it. I've been in the trenches, I know what it's like. And so really being able to understand and have that compassion to be like, yep, there's a hard day, but guess what? We're going to get to the other side of it and it's going to be great. Sometimes we need that. We need that light to be kind of shined on us when we don't feel so great at the moment. So,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. So they can reach out to you to have a complimentary call, but
Yes.
tell me a little bit more of who you help and why somebody else, maybe they don't want to do gut healing, but they're like thinking about healing other things that they're experiencing. Maybe they resonate with your story of having
Yeah.
doctors not being able to help guide them in the right direction, or they want to learn how to support themselves with all options, not just
Right.
medication. Maybe they
Yes.
wanna learn about nutrition, they wanna learn about supplementation. Tell
Yeah.
us more about who you help and what Banduri Holistics does, and then I'm also going while you're speaking, I'm gonna throw up your email address in there for contact.
Yeah. So really what Banduri Holistics is resources, support. I mean, and that can come emotional, like I've done so much training with like behavior modification and understanding why we do things. And I a lot of what I focus on is autoimmune related. It's also chronic health conditions that I mean, these are symptoms and issues that just don't go away. A lot of people want like things just to get better, but at the end of the day, that's not always the deck of cards that everyone's given. There's some things that they're just a part of their everyday life and they have to learn to juggle that and walk through that. And it can be extremely exhausting and overwhelming when you have something that is constantly on your plate. You're constantly juggling. And so what I found is that you need to have support. You need to have somebody to walk through it with, and you need to have resources. I mean, I've done so much research on so many different things. I mean, you can never know enough. And so at the end of the day, there's so many tools out there that we just don't realize to help support our body to reintroduce that communication and that understanding and compassion for ourselves, so that we can heal and that we can get better, and that healing looks different for everybody, and that it's not linear. It has ups and downs. And so, we learn to be gentle with ourselves and to really kind of walk through this process knowing that we don't have to be alone. So,
And that's so key. You do
yeah.
not have to be alone.
Yeah.
And actually, you'll be more successful if you have that support.
Right.
And no one expects you to do it alone. Like, no
Right.
one would expect you to heal your own broken foot. Okay.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
give yourself that grace and give yourself the permission to invest in yourself, to have the right support system, because we are not meant to have all the answers. There are people out there that can help. So I have it scrolling on the banner below. If you'd like to schedule a complimentary consult with Liza, she's an amazing source of information. Take her up on this, because who knows, this may not be complimentary one day. So just for this show only,
Right.
you have your 20-minute session.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming
Yes,
on. This
thank
was so
you.
good. We're gonna have to have you
Absolutely.
back on again to
Oh,
explore
I'd love
another
that.
topic.
Yeah.
And like I said, if anyone wants to get in touch with Liza, her email is below. Until next time, this is
Yeah.
Coach Rose rooting for you to try something new in 2022, like an
Right.
elimination diet.
Yeah.
See you later.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great day.